This was initially the precursor to and inspiration for episode 17. And like episode 17, it was originally supposed to be a mini-sode, but at least it isn't 6 hours, right? If you're a new K-pop fan, you may not have heard of it, but for almost a decade now, a curse has hung like a massive angry storm cloud over the largest survival show empire in the industry, the Produce Curse. Produce has several curses, like the first place seat curse, but when you hear someone refer to the Produce Curse, chances are they're referring to the post-produce group curse, in which, after an Mnet produce group disbands, the groups the members head to next inevitably fail, certainly in comparison to the success of the original group. There are countless groups like this. Gugudan, Weki Meki, WJSN, AB6, I've never known if it's 6 or CIX, but them, Drippin, Wei, Mirai, and so on. Even after the end of Produce as a series, the curse continues for its successor, Planet 999, with Maiden being the newest victims of the Produce curse. And Double are doing well for now, but who knows what will happen. No matter how much these groups seem primed for success, and no matter how much success they gain early in their careers, there always seems to be something in the way, preventing them from gaining the success and long legacy of the original group, whether it be poor company management, controversies, member losses, hiatuses, poor music, or more. They all just kind of fizzle out. There has been one single exception to this rule, IZ*ONE. For various reasons which I won't fully get into today, including a significant dose of luck, IZ*ONE avoided disbandment during the produce rigging scandal, became super popular, and for the most part beat the produce curse. The group's members have become relatively successful soloists and actors, and 2 groups have been born from it. Say My Name, a group of success, but which comes from a small company anyway, and Le Sserafim, who have achieved huge success and have outshone IZ*ONE in terms of music show wins and album sales. Okay, so Le Sserafim, and to a lesser extent the other members of IZ*ONE, have beat the produce curse, right? Well, it gets better. You saw the title. Le Sserafim and IZ*ONE may have escaped the produce curse, but there's one group which completely shattered it, achieving a level of success unheard of for a post-produce group, enough so that they've by far overtaken IZ*ONE and even rival and at times overtake the most popular of produce groups, like Zero Base One. The success of IVE, above all other post-IZ*ONE projects, utterly shattered the idea that the produce curse was destined to get to every single post-produce group. It provided an unfortunately doomed seed of hope for Kepler fans, and provides a seed of hope for Zero Base One fans. It remains to be seen whether that seed will grow or not. If you weren't a K-pop fan or produce group fan when IVE debuted, well, as someone who was there, it's a bit hard to express to you how industry-breaking it was, and how quickly IVE rose to the top of 4th-gen leader lists. IVE, along with groups like Everglow and Stacey, were a group that really made a lot of people question whether the age of the big 3/4 was over, and whether K-pop was becoming more democratized. The age of the big 3/4 certainly wasn't over, but isn't it kind of crazy that IVE had us questioning if it was? And in my opinion, it all comes down to IVE's absolutely brilliant marketing. So, to illustrate why, in this episode I'll run us through a brief history of the produce curse, IZ*ONE and IVE. And then we'll talk about IVE's planning phase and pre-debut era, including the selection of the members and their concept. I'll then talk about their debut marketing and single albums before talking about their marketing and development over time, from their single album trilogy to their first album, IVE IVE, and their later IVE series albums and Revive Plus. Then I'll summarise some of the trends in their marketing and how that's allowed them to create a niche and help redirect the current girl group market. So let's get into it, starting with a very truncated history of post-produce groups, IZ*ONE and IVE. The produce curse first occurred in 2016 and 2017 with the various groups of the members of IOI. The first post-IOI's debut IOI group was Gugudan, who debuted on June 28, 2016, and featured two IOI members, Sejong and Mina. Gugudan were followed by Priston on March 21st, 2017, and other IOI-related groups are WJSN, Wekimeki, and Daya. Although I wouldn't say any of these groups were super unsuccessful, I mean, they live in the public consciousness to this day, they were all surprisingly unsuccessful considering how popular and loved IOI were. WJSN had a decent amount of popularity and were probably the most successful of these groups, at least in terms of longevity, but even they ended up kind of fading into obscurity and have basically been active since 2022 despite gaining a small amount of traction from winning Queendom 2. This was the start of the Produce Curse, which quickly was given that name, and it has continued through the later seasons of Produce 101. No matter how popular 101 and X1 were, their related groups just didn't gain the success they were expected to, and were plagued with controversies, members leaving, poor management, and stagnation. Even groups that looked like they had gained or were gaining traction, like Nuest and AB6, just kind of fell off. On the bright side, post-produce soloists have always had decent success. Sejong, Somi, Chang'e, Kang Daniel, and Woods, to name a few, are soloists that are pretty well known of, at least among those who follow soloists. This curse has even continued so far in Planet 9992 with Maiden. But back to 2018. IZ*ONE debuted from Produce 48, a collaboration with Japanese idol group AKB48. IZ*ONE, as with all Produce groups, had a very successful debut and became very popular and influential, especially considering they helped define the nature of girl groups at the start of the 4th gen. IZ*ONE were established enough and popular enough that when the Produce rigging scandal broke in 2019, they managed to survive, although they were put on hiatus for a while. Despite that, they came back and continued to fill a unique and appreciated niche in the market: elegance, colour, and confidence. IZ*ONE, as with all Produce groups, had tons of rumours about renewal, but in the end this didn't go through, and they disbanded on April 29th, 2021. Hence began the waiting game. Who would be the first post-IZ*ONE group? And would they be able to break the Produce curse? IVE were the first group to end this wait, debuting on December 1st, 2021 with their first single album 11 and the title track of the same name. An early birthday present for me! Brilliant. IVE soon achieved massive success, including many music show wins, lots of album sales, views, and viral moments, and they became one of the fastest groups ever to win a daesang with their comeback song Love Dive, which won Song of the Year at several end-of-year award shows in 2022, including the MMAs and Mama. They've become one of the most popular girl groups and rival the likes of the big three of the 3rd gen, Twice, Blackpink, and Red Velvet. They're a very well-known and influential girl group, and their comebacks always cause a buzz. Let's discuss. IZ*ONE had 26 music show wins. LE SSERAFIM at time of writing sit on 37. IZ*ONE peaked at 566,000 album sales with 2.1 million Korean sales over their 2.5-year career. LE SSERAFIM, having recently reached their 4th anniversary, are sitting at a whopping 7.4 million Korean sales and peaked at 1.5 million for Unforgiven. A massive increase from IZ*ONE, even considering their longer career, their Big Four status, and album sales inflation in the past 5 years or so. This is a massive achievement for a girl group, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to deny that LE SSERAFIM have shattered their Produce curse. But IVE? Yeah, they have 83 music show wins. The 8th most of all K-pop groups ever, and the highest of any 4th or 5th gen group. They've sold 12.7 million Korean albums. Their peak album, IVE Mine, sold 2.1 million copies. Even Zero Base One, the modern Produce juggernauts, never sold that many copies for a single album. Girl group sales and music show wins are consistently lower than boy groups, yet IVE beat out almost every group of a similar age to them and can beat out commonly considered generation leaders like Stray Kids in some metrics. This is absolute insanity. My jaw was literally on the floor when I looked this up. I knew the gap between IZ*ONE and other produce groups and post-produce groups was big, but I never knew it was this ridiculously big. Okay, time to calm down. Everyone knows IVE are successful. It isn't really that big of a deal, Casper. So, having taken a look at the stark difference between IVE and previous and following post-produce groups, let's talk about why they were so good. Starting at the beginning, of course. All the way back at the beginning. In fact, starting when Yujin and Wonyoung joined Produce 48. Okay, so it's 2017 and you're watching Mama in Japan. AKB48's producer Yasushi Akimoto wins an award, and right after, a mini VCR plays, revealing the logos for Produce 101 and AKB48 merging to produce Produce 48. Nicely and hilariously followed by 101's center, Kang Daniel, looking confused and shocked. After having created two mega successful groups, IOI and 101, Produce 101 was back, this time with a new gimmick. It was a collaboration between AKB48 and the original Produce series. Hence, the show, which started airing in early to mid 2018, was made up of 57 Korean trainees and 39 Japanese trainees who were imported from AKB48 and its sister groups. At the point of this announcement, the majority of the auditions and selections for Produce 48 would already have been completed, and the majority of the cast would have been chosen. Enter Starship, a mid-sized company who had previously debuted popular artists like Sister, WJSN, and Monster X. Starship had experience with the Produce franchise, and they knew how to play it like a fiddle, i.e. how to use their connections, possibly including two large companies like Kakao, to get their trainees rigged into the final group. Don't forget, guys, this is when Produce was actually quantitatively vote rigged. So, Starship had a really smart plan. They sent 3 of their Korean trainees to Produce 48, An Yi-jin, Cho Ka-hyun, and Jang Won-young. All 3 were very young. Born in 2003 and 2004, they were 13 and 14 when they first appeared on the show. Nonetheless, they put on a good show, and although Ka-hyun was eliminated, Wonyoung and Yujin went on to the finale, where they became the 2 youngest members of the final group, IZ*ONE, and Wonyoung became the group's center on her 14th birthday. Insane. Okay, fun story, Casper. Why are you telling it? To discuss the exploitation of minors? No. Although it is horrifying that Wonyoung and Yujin were 13 and 14 on the show, that's a topic for the eventual Produce 48 video. I bring all of this up here to say that Starship made a very smart decision from the get-go. This was their first really smart choice related to IVE. Obviously, it was smart to have Wonyoung and Yujin rigged into IZ*ONE, and to have Wonyoung become the center over Sakura, but that's just the kind of thing that every company would do for their trainees. Nevertheless, Starship sent their trainees and allowed them to become the face of the group, or at least Wonyoung did. Wonyoung, as the fresh and adorable center and maknae of IZ*ONE, defined the group's image, or more like, she fit the planned image perfectly, hence why she was picked to be the center. She was responsible for some of the most iconic intros of their songs, including their beloved debut, La Vie en Rose, and her stage presence style, cute and exaggerated smiles, youthfulness, and charm, became the image of the group. Yujin also contributed to this image, although she was far less highlighted in comparison. Okay, so step 1 complete. When IZ*ONE disband, Starship owns the contracts of 2 of the members who best fit the group's image, including their iconic, insanely popular and beloved center. And better yet, since they sent them to Produce when they were young, they're still young enough to have a long life in the group. In 2021, when IZ*ONE disbanded, Wonyoung and Yujin were turning 18 and 17 respectively. Despite being young, they'd established themselves and their skills in the industry, perfect for Starship to take advantage of. But while IZ*ONE were still active, Starship were no doubt busy planning their next move for these 2 members. They brought together 4 trainees to complement Wonyoung and Yujin, Gal, who had previously been a trainee under Starship, and 3 new trainees they recruited while IZ*ONE and Produce 48 ran. Liz, Ray, and Iso. And they chose well. This good selection of members was the second great choice they made. Yujin and Wonyoung are vocalists and dancers, and Yujin could well be a main vocalist of this group, but she needed someone to back her up. The added 4 members filled the niches left by the 2 formational members nicely. Liz filled in Eugen's main vocal gaps, Gail and Ray filled the rapper gap, while Ray brought the likelihood of a strong Japanese fanbase, and Iso served as a nice final member, being able to do a little bit of everything while complementing Wonyoung's stage presence style, and of course being a cute maknae. Speaking of, Starship stuck with their MO of debuting idols young. At debut, Iso, born in 2007, was only 14, the same as Wonyoung when IZ*ONE debuted. This obviously caused a stir, but when has a group having super young members ever held them back from success? I can't think of an example. It certainly wouldn't hold IVE back, and Starship knew it. Okay, on to the third great choice, marketing. Starship needed to capitalize on the IZ*ONE hype while introducing the new members, and as much as people hate them for it, they absolutely made the right choice. They made Eugen the leader of the group and made Wonyoung and Eugen pseudo-dual centers of the group, with, of course, an emphasis on the hugely popular figure that is Wonyoung. We'll talk about this more later, but as much as the fans hated this, it was the perfect choice. Wonyoung is popular, pretty, and well known for her stage presence and charm, so she was a natural fit for the face of this group. While she, and to a lesser extent Eugen, shone at debut, Starship could showcase the other members as backups for the duo, showing how, by filling in Eugen and Wonyoung's weaknesses, the group would become a cohesive unit. And sure, they wouldn't get as much attention initially, but the only way I can think to describe this is a soft launch of the other members. It's like Suyeon in Billy. She was added a few days after debut and only got a small part in Ring Ring, hence she was exposed to their audience but not shoved in their faces. But when the group had a comeback, she was given a larger part and treated more like a center, only after the audience had acclimatized to her. This soft launch structure is the type that Starship used for IVE. While the other members propped up the main duo pulled up the other members too. This was a genius move. Okay, but if Eugen and Wonyoung are the centers of this group, they must have a cutesy IZ*ONE-esque concept, right? I mean, those two embodied IZ*ONE's concept. This is where the fourth great choice made by Starship comes in. Instead of trying to perfectly fill the IZ*ONE niche, which could lead to the group stagnating or failing to live up to IZ*ONE's greatness, they chose to partially fill it while expanding too, highlighting Eugen and Wonyoung's growth through showing an evolution of their concept, from cutesy and sweet to a more elegant and slightly more mature sound. It's like a Venn diagram of IZ*ONE and IVE, and this is a very natural progression for Eugen and Wonyoung. They were cute princesses when they were younger, and now they've grown into their crowns. This was super smart. By making IVE's concept an evolution of IZ*ONE's, Starship declare that their group, above all other post-IZ*ONE groups, is the singular worthy successor to IZ*ONE. IVE are the evolution of IZ*ONE, so IZ*ONE fans should follow them. This is where their smart selection of trainees comes back into play. All 4 new trainees fit nicely into either an IZ*ONE or IVE style concept, and complement Eugen and Wonyoung's stage presence, hence creating a group just as cohesive or even more so than the original IZ*ONE. Perfect. As a matter of interest, HYBE also evolved IZ*ONE's concept with LE SSERAFIM and with Chaewon and Sakura, but while they made the choice to completely subvert IZ*ONE's concept and go for an opposites attract kind of thing, Starship included elements of IZ*ONE's concept and image while bringing something related but new. So IVE's evolution from IZ*ONE feels more natural and they feel more like an IZ*ONE 2.0. Alright, on to Starship's 5th great choice, concept and album rollout. Right from the start, IVE were the more mature but still equally refreshing IZ*ONE. They took the aesthetics of IZ*ONE towards the end of their career, Secret Story of the Swan, Panorama, and evolved it. You know I'm a fan of logo motions as representations of a group's concept, and IVE were no different. Their logo motion is sharp, feminine, and mysterious, a bejeweled, elegant trio of letters on a black background. Their Have What We Want video and the introductions of the members reinforced this. The new members were bookended with Wonyoung and Yujin, so that audiences were initiated into this group with something familiar while also getting the excitement of new things. And each member embodied a different kind of desire in line with, well, not only the possessive name of the group, IVE, I have, but also the Have What We Want title. And if you couldn't figure it out just from the images, the editors not so subtly literally put the words of what the girls wanted in the Have What We Want video. Wonyoung wanted victory, Liz wanted cute things, i.e. taste, Ray wanted to explore and learn, Gail wanted to flawlessly target her goals, Iso wanted a spark, I guess meaning playfulness and joy, and Yujin wanted you, i.e. the love of the fans. Their self-introductions were also bookended by Yujin and Wonyoung, and showed a more personal side to each member. They're hilariously highly edited, but highly edited to look poorly edited. And they do the classic eternal parasocial K-pop thing of showing how the members already have lots of things, but, well, Wonyoung really likes sleeping, so she's just like all of us, right? And they all want more, right? It's their concept. 11 placed them smack dab in the middle of this. The song lyrically was about their desire for the object of the song. Romantic, but not in a I love you way, in a somewhat concerning, almost yandere way. They said they were feeling a range of new emotions, but the slow, deliberate pre-chorus, the mentions of heaven, but in a dream, and the darkness of the music video in comparison made this feel at least somewhat creepy and predatory, something they'd come back to many a time later. I mean, I'd always thought that their hand movements in the last chorus looked like claw shapes or that they'd ripped someone's heart out, and what would you know, then they did Heya. The music video itself was all about the facade of a glam life and the difference between the reality of IVE as idols and their dream world. The sets are beautiful and intricate and richly portrayed in gold, marble, and glass, but they're incomplete and small in the vastness of the studio, giving them a liminal quality, and they're all uncannily tilted. The main set they dance on has columns lying flat on the ground, like the ruins of an old city, and there's a gorgeous blue tower of some description that Yujin stands in front of, but it's literally in the process of falling, suspended in time. The one thing that remains upright, the vase in the intro, falls partway through and shatters on Ray's head, showing either the fragility of the world they're in or the unusual toughness of the girls, or I guess both, depending on how you want to see it. This, combined with the unsmiling faces of the members in many scenes, their uneven blue gloves, and the claw-like rotoscope in the intro, well, I wouldn't want to get myself involved in them personally. I also love the cinematography and editing of the video. The camera is almost always slightly tilted, and if we're ever straight on for a time, say out of necessity when they're all sitting down in the intro for the sake of symmetry, the next shot will be tilted. Even shots which have no right being tilted in a regular music video, like the one of Liz sitting on her couch, are tilted, reinforcing the strange nature of their world. If we're not tilted side to side, i.e. a Dutch tilt, we're tilting up or down with often extreme and unexpected high or low angles. Often these strange angles reveal the emptiness and constructed nature of the set, like when we see green lights behind Iso in the final chorus, or the edges of the set when the girls and later Wonyoung are in the tunnel parts of the set. This would seem like an editing mistake if we didn't have the pre-established, pre-debut theme of the difference between their idol goals and their real selves, and if we didn't have nice little moments in the music video like when Yujin looks into the mirror while singing about the divide between herself and the object of her desires. It's moments like these which made the fans ask whether IVE's concept was basically narcissism. More on that later, but they definitely do lean heavily into general mythology aesthetics. The entire music video is packed full of styling and set details which are very reminiscent of the architecture and mythology of, generally, ancient Europe, the Mediterranean, and West Asia. And this is all well and good, and everyone liked it, and everyone talked about how shocking it was that there was no rap, even though tons of K-pop songs don't have a rap, and it was super successful and so on. But a music video doesn't just appear out of nothingness, does it? Starship had a strategy with IVE. Taking a page out of Blackpink's book, but vastly improving on it, they created an environment of scarcity right from the go. 3 single albums, 1 music video each, 1 title track with a second song to back it up. For 11, which represented their idol image, it was Take It, which represented their true selves. Take It was more explicit about their desires, saying that they wanted to achieve their dreams and would take them rather than be hesitant and overcalculating. They explicitly said that they had claws and were toxic, while 11 was all about cute colours and emotions, and all things considered was very vague lyrically. With their comeback with Love Dive, IVE were more explicitly chasing the romance they set up in 11. Many of their themes and aesthetics from 11 continued. They were still in a fake-looking set inspired by European and Mediterranean mythology drifting in the black void of the studio, and there was still that tilted feeling, although slightly less so. The song was all about the nature of the heart, but again in an unsettling, almost predatory way. I've pondered the nature of love from a position of power and invited the audience into this realm of love, but every time they did, something strange was happening. Liz was looking at a garden which was inside a cupboard, Gail was posed in front of fake 2 small wings, and the members dived from a diving board in the clouds, so they basically killed themselves for love. The glitz and glamour, the otherworldly idol look is still there, especially in the glittery, dreamlike dance break, but there's also an even greater emphasis on the feeling of being hunted down or scientifically dismantled. The choreography, the music video, and the lyrics all emphasize the idea of the members' curiosity as they stare at the object of their affections, but the sinister smiles that they, and especially Eugen, give show their power and control. The lyrics also show this contrast between power and submission. It's a chasing game to them, and there's the creepy mention of narcissism and a sacrifice. The original demo Love Bites implies that the love interest is the narcissistic one and the speaker is the sacrifice, ready to die for her love, but the altered lyrics that IVE uses are more ambiguous. Are IVE narcissistic? Are they the sacrifices dedicated to love, as all idols are, or are they actually the ones sacrificing their love interests for their own enjoyment? The masochism of the original demo may not be fully present in the final song, but it's definitely there, and perhaps has also become sadism. Great song, but please do remind me why on earth we have a 15-year-old in this group. Royal contrasted Love Dive in the opposite way that Take It contrasted with 11. 11 was the idol world and Take It the dark undertones, while in their second single album, Love Dive showed the dark undertones of their concept, while Royal was the reflection of their idol image, all about diamonds being powerful and being elegant. Their third single album with Afterlike brought them well and truly into the real world. Even their concept film, called the IVE Summer Film, was grounded and was shot literally out in the real world rather than on polished sets. And they no longer had the same power as in their previous 2 releases. They were painted as young schoolgirls in love and very naive about the world, their love, and their friendship. Afterlike brought this into their music video aesthetics by amping up the fakeness of their sets to 11. Like seriously, this must have been the most fake a K-pop music video set has ever looked, and it was on purpose. While keen-eyed viewers, or anyone with an interest in film or analysis, would have been able to see the fakeness of the sets in 11, and most people got a general sense of fakeness from Love Dive, they weren't, like, actively drawing attention to the artificiality. Afterlike drew explicit attention to it. They zoomed out and showed the whole set, including where it ended. They showed position markers and anchors for potential motion graphics, and they showed the cameras and lights shoved in the girls' faces. Shots were ostensibly poorly framed. They could have hidden the lights in the second chorus dance sequence and made it seem more contained, but they decided not to. They could have framed Liz's shots closer to hide the scaffolding holding up the background, but they didn't. The first chorus dance sequence looks kind of terrible. The set looks fake and abruptly ends, the lights are just kind of there with no way to hide the scaffolding, and the members are plainly clothed with chunky, kitschy, brightly coloured jewellery. But that's okay, because it was all intentional. This makes the members feel paradoxically more and less powerful at the same time. They're now grounded in the real world. Their first chorus outfits are less glamorous and seem poorly prepared. They're no longer able to maintain any illusion of their idol image, they're just on a set and not even a good looking one at that. And they're being surrounded by cameras and lights, observed on all sides and unable to escape. Even the lyrics of the song are far more innocent than their previous two releases. But at the same time, they maintain their power. They play to the cameras, seemingly able to ignore the artificiality of their surroundings. They aren't fazed by the cameras shoved in their face and the fireworks and explosions behind them. They're just focused on one thing, their goal, what they want to have. And of course, even the lyrics maintain a confident declaration of love. Are they actually powerful, powerless, or are they just faking it? That's up to you to decide. But my satisfaction suggests that they maintain their power, confidence, and narcissism, and their gaze in Afterlike always maintained the same power it had in their previous music videos. Don't forget, 11 starts with eyes. Oh, also, fun fact mentioned that the Japanese music video for 11 showed an interesting contrast between the girls being more down to earth and also literally being gods. And they had the same mythological architecture and aesthetics and the same emphasis on glass and glam as in the original music video. During this era of the three IVE single albums, Starship repeatedly made great choices which helped the group go stronger and gain popularity. The songs were relatively fresh and unique in the industry at the time. 11 and Love Dive forewent rap, cute love songs, and girl crush in favour of elegance and soft hidden power, and Afterlike brought back the disco trend which had been a thing in 2020 but had fizzled out by 2022. The songs were tailored to the members in the knowledge that they could pull it off, and most of all, Starship towed the line of controversy and spotlighting the IZ*ONE members and introducing the new members. While Yujin sang the intro to Love Dive and Wonyoung was the first person audiences saw in 11, the other members were all still salient. Liz opened 11 and Ray opened Afterlike. Wonyoung wasn't even seen until the first chorus and second verse in Afterlike. By giving each member their own set in each music video, they were creating a cohesive product where all the members were equals, and each had a chance to shine. But this extremely and dramatically contrasted with their decisions in the literal real world, where they were constantly under fire for prioritising the two IZ*ONE members and especially Wonyoung over the other members. And again, I think this was pretty genius. In their music videos and similar official content, Starship was presenting the group as a cohesive unit of equals. Yujin and Wonyoung were prioritised as centres, but not by much. But in the real world, they were going all out. There were two main advantages to this. First of all, well, they knew that Wonyoung could pull this all off, so they're just straight up getting the massive benefit of having Wonyoung under their company. Like, that's OP. But also, well, any publicity is good publicity, right? Or at least if it isn't big enough drama to potentially destroy your group, which it wasn't. When people heard of the infamous Wonyoung main character styling, they would go to check out performances, or music videos and other materials, and they'd be focusing on all of the members. And what does this mean? Well, prime time to get attached to them and their skills. As I mentioned in the previous section, Starship chose their trainees well, to complement Wonyoung and Yujin and their performance styles while still being able to hold their own. And that's what they were doing, and how they were gaining fans. Even beyond this, when people went to watch music videos, what would they see? Relatively equal screen time of the members, all looking glamorous and unique in the industry. Wonyoung and Yujin were, in my opinion, perfectly used to create a cohesive bridge from IZ*ONE to IVE. They were the core of the group and could tap into the IZ*ONE nostalgia while being able to do something more niche and mature. They were the foundation for IVE's concept and albums and were fully capable of carrying the weight of the group with their stage presence skills alone. Then, once Starship had established that cohesion and continuity from IZ*ONE, they started bringing the other members forward more, giving them more opportunities and publicity, giving them the supposed best outfits, and so on. This was a great balancing act of publicity and drama, and I've always thought that Starship, despite the criticism, handled the situation almost perfectly. Although goodness knows if the IVE members agree with me on that. But I'll discuss this more later. If you're interested in a bit more content about the original trilogy, there's a video you may or may not have seen before, IVE and Their Crumbling Palace by Lady Leah, which is one of the only IVE analysis videos I've seen online. It talks about the concept of their dual worlds, our world and their magical one, and talks about how their consistent marketing shows a logical progression of their concept. I don't agree with everything in the video. For instance, I don't think IVE has as solid of a storyline as Lady Leah suggests, but I think it's a good video and I recommend it nonetheless. Anyway, having established the group's outer image as aloof, luxurious, elegant, and perfect stars, and their hidden image of a fake life and a mask to hide, basically their thirst for blood, Starship had ended up with a very successful group by design. Everyone knew of IVE as the elegant, graceful, and perfect group. I mean, even the imperfections in their music videos were perfect. They were the true successors to IZ*ONE's elegant concept. They had a unique niche in the industry, they were soft and feminine and wonderful, but OMG, I wish they had more music, right? We're starving over here, Starship. So what did they do? They announced 6 months after Afterlike, IVE's first full album. If you weren't around at this point, either in K-pop or the Dive fandom, all I can really say is that this, the announcement of IVE's first full album, was an event. IVE had released 6 Korean songs so far, and here were a full extra 11 songs. Not only that, but they brought back double title tracks and pre-releases, which had basically always been a thing in K-pop, but which were given a resurgence by IVE and to a lesser extent some other groups of the time. In my Rewriting Kepler episode, I mentioned how dumb it was for Wake One to give Kepler a comeback on the same day that IVE released IVE IVE. Well, now you know why. They'd just taken over the K-pop world, gone mega viral, and had won Daesangs less than a year after debut. Their first full album was definitely going to be one of the events of the year. The tracklist was perfectly IVE. The titles suggested more of their feminine, powerful concept with, of course, the sinister aspect with Blue Blood and Hypnosis. So I'm sure you can imagine, or remember if you were there, how shocked everyone was when they tuned into the pre-release and it sounded like this. I mean, realistically, kitsch wasn't actually that out of place in IVE's discography, certainly not when compared to some of the things they released later. The verses were in the same family as their previous 3 title tracks, it was just the chorus that caught people a bit off guard. I remember people saying that this was terrible and so on, basically acting like this would ruin IVE's career the same way people acted like Gnarly would ruin Cat's Eyes. And guess what? Neither did. Ha! The actual song of Kitsch itself was very in line with IVE's previous releases. They were feminine, confident, powerful, and unapologetic. The main difference was that this wasn't a love song, it was more on the self-love or self-declaration side of things. IVE had gained extreme success with their first trilogy, and now they celebrated it and themselves for achieving, realistically, a good chunk of their goals. The production was all round more polished. There were no more edges of sets in frames or lights showing or cameras or anything else. It was more grounded in the real world. Like our real world, not just the real world of their concept. And speaking of the real world, they directly said things like, quote, "I live the way I want, what more do you want?" And Wonyoung's epic line, quote, "Sweet words, you have a hidden intention, I won't fall for it because I'm the smart one." Thus, it became both a declaration of who they were as idols and who they were as real people, neither of whom were to be swayed by fans. I'll just put a little, editing note here because I realised I didn't make this very clear. So I talked about Afterlike being in the real world in terms of you can see the cameras, you can see the sets, etc. But I also talked about Kitsch being in the real world, but you can't see the cameras. This was bad writing on my part. What I mean is that Afterlike is in the real world, right? Like, it's literally, you can see like evidence of them being idols. There's cameras, there's lights, there's the edges of sets, etc. Kitsch was their first music video that was actually filmed, not in like a studio. You know, it was actually filmed in real world environments. So it felt literally more grounded because instead of the like fake looking sets of 11, Love Dive, Afterlike, they were in the real world. Hopefully that makes sense. The fact of the matter was that Kitsch's musical change-up freaked a lot of fans out. But when IVE started performing Kitsch on music shows and fans had a moment to adjust, they realised that not only did they like the song and how the group performed it, but it actually suited the group too. Kitsch expanded their image in the industry ever so slightly and showed that they weren't just elegant as a concept or for a single moment, but this was what they were like all the time, and no one could stop them because, well, they were just being their true selves. It worked for the same reason that Gnarly worked. It changed up their image, made sure they didn't stagnate, but did so in a calculated way, providing more excitement rather than just completely alienating all of their fans. Although I'm sure that both songs alienated at least a portion of their fandoms. Not me though. That's the moment I became more interested in both groups, because if there's one thing I like in K-pop, it's a group that suddenly shifts aesthetic concepts. This shouldn't be a surprise. At the end of the day, TXT were the group who got me into K-pop. Thankfully for everyone involved, IM was the kind of thing you'd expect from IVE, with no hidden crazy choruses. And similarly to Kitsch, it showed their success and confidence after their single trilogy. Real sets, believable styling, no more weird Dutch tilts. They didn't need to hide their powers anymore, they were just straight up at the top. And considering the album was I've Ive, as in I have Ive, and kickstarted their era of I have albums, it makes sense that the album would be all about who they were as a group, chasing their dreams no matter what, flying high, being victorious, and achieving their goals. From these albums and the progression from the original trilogy to this, we can very solidly see that IVE do not have a storyline, which makes me sad. But what they do have is a very strong group image and a strong idea to market themselves with, the idol image and their real selves. There is so much you can do with that, which is why it's a popular idea in K-pop, but most groups only commit to it for an album or two, ahem from us9. IVE have made it their image, as the contrast between Kitsch and IM showed. And as Kitsch and Afterlike show, even their real selves are elegant. IVE took it a step further with their next album, I've Mine, which had triple title tracks, two of which, Either Way and Off the Record, were pre-releases. Similarly to I've Ive, the three title tracks for this album showed three different sides of the group, all of which were equally important and equally IVE. Either Way was a soft and emotional ballad, and the first, if you don't count I've Ive, of a long series of songs in which IVE, or realistically Starship, talked back to and called out the haters and general internet netizens, making explicit references to events of their idolhood, the supposed dislike the members had for each other, the need to be carefree on stage while hiding your traumas, and the need to pair up introverts and extroverts for live streams lest it be boring or something else. Let's just ignore the fact that none of the members contributed to the lyrics, but K-pop fans don't care about that, they care about the image, and the image was a clapback at the haters. The music video was similarly, ostensibly, down to earth. The members were caught in some kind of melancholy, often crying in their beds or quietly in corners, and the bruises on their skin were made of glitter. They stared into the camera in black and white, seemingly confronting the audience who had made so many assumptions about them as idols who were really just girls doing their best, and in the end they gained a sense of freedom and celebrated themselves regardless. The whole music video was quite lo-fi in edit and design, with simple styling and sets, and inconsistent exposure and camera quality which gave it that home video authentic appearance. As I'm sure you can imagine, the fans loved this. The second song to follow up this vulnerable side of the group was Off the Record, which was all about the group's desires, good and bad, expressed as the desire to experience everything with each other and with their love interest. I mean, their name is IVE, they're all about their goals. The music video expressed this through the idea of nighttime making everything seem more exciting, and through the idea of doing secret, forbidden things at night. Secret, forbidden things like being free to go out in the rain when you don't have to. Hey, whimsy is nice. So we had Either Way, which was their true selves, and Off the Record, which is what they wanted to be. Then they had Baddie, which was them achieving that level of power and success in the current day. Interestingly enough, the actual album orders them in this order: Off the Record, Baddie, and then Either Way. So shows their goals, then the idol, current powerful self, and then the true self in that order. But I guess the order doesn't really matter, it's the contrast that's important. Baddie was the divergence from their previous discography that people interpreted kitsch as, but it had a few things going for it which made this change seem less abrupt. First, of course, kitsch. Without kitsch, Baddie would have seemed like it came from nowhere, but with kitsch it seemed more IVE. Second, because Baddie came with 2 other title tracks, both of which were closer to, although on the softer side of, IVE's quote original sound, it was brought closer in line with their trilogy era concept. And finally, well, Baddie was not only hyper feminine and thus hyper IVE, but it was also the exact same thing they'd been previously: powerful and predatory. In this case, literally cat humans who preyed on other humans. Are they the female version of Enhyphen? This is what Isna should have been! Beyond being yet another declaration of their confidence, power, and uniqueness, both in terms of their concept and in very meta terms of their dominance over the industry, Baddie was a nice bridge into their next album, IVE Switch, an album whose name I imagine refers to the idea that they can switch up anything and adapt to and dominate anything. Switch yet again came with 2 title tracks. Wow, what a shocker. Hey, if there's one group that knows how to use multiple title tracks in pre-releases, well, it's IVE. The 2 title tracks here were Heya and Ascendio, both of which developed a fantastical aesthetic for the group, in 2 different directions. Heya continued the cat-human theming from Baddie, but with a twist. Instead of being just cat humans, they were tiger humans, and seemed to have at least some kind of spiritual or godlike power. Basically, like the tiger version of a Kumio, I guess? Which doesn't seem to be an actual thing as far as I can see from my research. The reason I say this is that they seem to have their own equivalent of a fox marble which gives them power. Anyway, in line with the Tiger Kumio theme, the entire music video makes use of traditional aesthetics. There was a debate at the time about how much of it was Korean versus Chinese and whether this was cultural appropriation of Chinese culture, but since I don't know enough about the differences between Korean and Chinese aesthetics to make a judgment, I'll just mention the controversy and leave it there. The more important thing in terms of this specific music video is that, although it had existed in their concept since debut, the music video well and truly centered on the idea that, sure, you were in a romance with IVE, but they were well and truly the ones with power in their relationship, and they could and would eat your soul if they wanted to. Ahem. Very Kumio of them. In contrast to Heya, which was very fantastical and was entirely set in a studio, Ascendio was more grounded aesthetically, believe it or not. Ascendio was fantastical in terms of being a magical girl anime where the members fought their dark mirror selves for control, only for neither group to really win in the end. The lyrics reflected this war between their arguably good and evil, but really more nuanced selves, talking about their changing selves, but never really specifying whether that change was good or bad. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is what Kepler should have been. A space group with Wadada, and you don't make them magical girls? Wake One, get on top of it for real! Use this music video as a proof of concept for my rework of Kepler, basically. Even down to the different headdresses for different versions of the self, and performing on music shows as both the good and evil versions. It's literally my original vision for Kepler embodied. Anyway, in terms of IVE, in line with their real selves versus idol selves concept, many fans interpreted the "Watch Me Don't Touch Me" lyric as yet another clapback against the crazy fans. Fans and the general public alike were generally very impressed with this release. The two songs were both new in IVE's discography and familiar, probably aided, as I mentioned earlier, by previous releases like Baddie and their connection to songs like 11. The two songs were also unique in the industry at the time, or at least in concept. Although boy groups tend to lean into traditional Korean culture and aesthetics on a semi-regular basis, and some groups even become decently known for it, like ONEUS, girl groups don't seem to do this nearly as often, which left IVE with a nice niche to take over. Similarly, despite its immense popularity worldwide and recognizable aesthetics, very few groups even attempt a magical girl concept, let alone make it a long-lasting concept over multiple albums. Sadly, IVE was no different in that regard, as they dropped the magical girls for their next album, but while they did have it, they were one of the clearest, if not the clearest, examples of magical girls in K-pop, and are still held up as basically the standard of a magical girl concept. Shout out to Cosmosi, who have made it their concept, but they're literally a Japanese group, and Japanese groups do that all the time. Fans loved Switch because, as I've said themselves in Baddie, they weren't just following the trend, they were ahead of it, finding new niches constantly to keep the audience engaged. And yet, in a way I discussed at length in the Hype marketing video, they were always still recognisably IVE, both because of the strength of the members as a cohesive unit of performers, and because of their eternal concept markers, the confidence and romance with a dark fantastical twist, and the difference between the real and performed self, and of course, elegance. This is peak K-pop. This is what K-pop is designed to do at its best. Keep both old audiences through a concept, a sense of loyalty, and a continuation of theme, and draw in new audiences by finding new niches. Peak K-pop, I tell you! Anyway, after that we came to the second last IVE album, IVE Empathy, with, you'll never guess, that's right, 2 title tracks. The concept trailer for the album set a clear tone for it. As the album title would suggest, it was all about the different emotions, good and bad, that humans experience, and the act of empathizing with other people, even when you were very different and had potentially been hurt by them. The pre-release was Rebel Heart, and while comments said it was the sister of I Am, really it was the sister of Either Way, being yet another explicit clapback against haters and fans alike. I think there's a few moments that exemplify this. First, Eugen's intro, where she sings, quote, "Start as if I achieved it all, end as if I won it all," which is what all K-pop groups, but especially ones from non-Big Four companies, have to do. IVE have to keep pretending that everything is going their way from the start. Second is Ray and Iso's shared part, where they say they have to protect their hearts and leave misunderstandings up to the audience, presumably instead of trying to excessively explain themselves. And this was Starship's strategy from the start. They've never explained themselves when it's come to IVE, and IVE have never explained themselves either outside of their music. Even when they've been embroiled in tons of controversy, they've continued on. So it's a nice touch to include something that is, 1, encouraging to audiences, i.e. encouraging them to protect their own hearts and uniqueness, 2, relevant to the group and their experiences, and 3, relevant to Starship's management of the group. The third main clapback in the song is Wonyoung's part, the love me, hate me, you'll never be me part. And when I heard that for the first time, I knew fans would love it. I mean, I can't complain, I love it too, even if it wasn't written by the members. Yeah, by the way, no lyricism from the members in this song. Anyway, more importantly to me, the music video adds context of all of these things, which I've kind of spoiled by narrating to you anyway. Eugen dances in the street, seemingly confident, in control and victorious, but her expression is uncertain and her dance moves are yearning. Ray is isolated on a train and is later shown to be dressed completely differently from those around her, showing how her protection of her heart is also the protection of her uniqueness. And Wonyoung is glamorous in a wedding dress. We all want to be young, rich, famous, and beautiful like her, right? But she's also in a playground which burns while she collapses in tears on the floor, because her childhood was literally burned early to fuel her career, which has left her the target of relentless hate trains. Is this K-pop company self-awareness? Surely not. Once they've established the uniqueness of the group and their rebellion by keeping their own identities while also being idols, the music video shifts to a broader perspective, including a series of extras who represent the uniqueness of IVE's fanbase and the wider population. They're clearly fans because they dance to IVE songs, but they also just represent humanity in general. The end of the song takes a wider, basically humanitarian tone, emphasizing how, despite all being unique and experiencing our own individual struggles, we're all just human. And fans clearly loved it because Rebel Heart got a whopping 11 wins on music shows, beating out the other title track Attitude, which only got 4 wins. This is even crazier when you consider that pre-releases typically get fewer, if any, wins compared to the song that's promoted with the release of the full album, probably because of album sales or something similar. Speaking of Attitude, it was very similar in theme, but much more upbeat and less raw in tone. It was still about being different from other people and appreciating your own uniqueness in and contribution to the world, but it was more comedic, with the loveless society the girls needed to turn into a love society, the catchy sample from Tom's Diner, and with the exaggerated scenes of the music video. It still, of course, had those meta references though, like including Wonyoung's viral twirl in the choreography, and Liz's lines, quote, "No matter what anyone says, I honestly like who I am," and, quote, "You'll fall in love by the end of the song." See? Same theme of real me as in Rebel Heart, but with a much less serious tone. I really appreciate the emphasis on going with the flow, appreciating the lucky moments of life, and making the mundane fun. Fun episode 17 related fact, I let do this too. Now we get to the final album in the IVE series, IVE Secret, which had, shockingly, only one title track, XOXC, which I absolutely hate saying as an Australian. That sucks. As the title track of both the album and the song would suggest, we were returning to the I want or I have aspect of IVE's concept, the more glamorous side with a secret darkness. This manifested in both the lyrics and the music video. The music video was louder and flashier than Attitude and Rebel Heart, and at least looked like it was more luxurious with a bigger budget. The lyrics were all about I want, as in I want to know more about you, my crush, but they also had a darker side, as the members said they'd ignore all red lights and stop signs to learn everything. And they said the subject of the song was in a dream, so presumably something bad would happen when they woke up. You know what that sounds like? Stalking. In line with this darker element, the music video wasn't just flashy. It returned to the flashiness of the members basically being gods, and destroying the world around them in their competition to be the best and get to the top. There were also versions of the members, without glam and in simple outfits edited in, hiding in corners or standing next to the glammed up members looking horrified at what was going on. So with that, we reached the end of the IVE era. Let's take a moment to consider this in the context of their broader discography and marketing. The original single album trilogy introduced us to IVE and the facets of their concept. They were glamorous and successful idols, and they were in love with and wanted to know more about you. But they were also powerful god spirit creatures who could hunt you down and break you if you ignored them. At the same time, they were just girls with dreams and wishes, and they were fighting against the horrors of the K-pop industry. The IVE albums went into these themes in more depth, using the IVE name to illustrate each part of the process. IVE, literally I have IVE, was a declaration of their true selves, or at least what they said were their true selves, their own unique style and the will to live and succeed regardless of what the audience and general public thought of them. Then IVE Mine revealed the conflict in that declaration. They were popular and confident in themselves, but at the same time they were struggling to heal from the hardships of the world, and they were vulnerable. IVE Switch and the following 2 albums, Empathy and Secret, removed the possessive apostrophe from the album titles, making them less things that the group had and more things that they did. IVE Switch literally represented the group's ability to rapidly switch between facets of their concept, and coincidentally also acted as a transition period. Ascendio literally talked about the group changing, from the predatory baddies and vulnerable girls of the previous album, to the girls of rebel heart and attitude who had gained a quiet sense of power and catharsis. Speaking of, IVE Empathy showed their own unique brand of empathy towards themselves and towards others, and their encouragement of others, and especially their fans, to embrace themselves. Finally, IVE Secret returned to the concept of their secret selves. Hilariously enough, for IVE, neither their idol selves or their true selves lacking confidence are secrets. They're open and proud about both. But their real secret, in terms of their concept, obviously not in the real world because it's obvious as can be, is their desire to kill and consume their love interest, or at the very least, their darker desires, which they try to hide in favour of cute desires to be buddies and run around in the rain. This also nicely led into a darker aesthetic era with the next section of this video, which I'll get into in a second. At the end of the day, the IVE era was important because it diversified and increased the depth of their concept, all while maintaining the same elegance Starship had marketed them with from the start, and used to subtly hold them up as the true successors of IZ*ONE. At the start of this era, they had a very specific aesthetic and sound that everyone associated with them, but at the end they were known as a far more versatile and also talented group. They also, as I mentioned several times for each album, kept finding niches. They were magical girls, mythological creatures, heart eaters, princesses, and pop stars, royal and supernatural. Most people generally interpret IVE's concept as being royal and elegant, and perhaps related to Greek mythology, which I would say is probably true, but the IVE era was designed to show that they could literally switch it up as they saw fit. This meant that, as with all well-marketed groups I discuss on this channel, with every comeback they were able to bring something fresh and interesting to their fans and the general public, but also maintain their elegant royal through line that made each comeback feel like it belonged to the group. Ahem, unlike Kepler. This era was also a great example of how IVE used dual or even triple title tracks and pre-releases to build hype for each album, and also to reflect the many facets of their concept. Hey, by the way, just like how the crystal that made up their logo is multifaceted. I think this is nicely evidenced by how IVE kept using pre-releases and multiple title tracks to both present the themes of each album and how much success they gained from it. As I said, pre-release tracks don't tend to get many, if any, wins, but many of IVE's were very successful. But if there's one marker of the success of this method outside of the number of wins they got, it's that we went from having almost no pre-releases in K-pop to being flooded with them. IVE didn't pioneer the method of pre-releases, but they were certainly a huge contributor to the growth of that strategy, which is now almost expected of larger groups. I also think it's worth mentioning that in this act of declaring who they were, IVE gained a lot of popularity and attention out of clapping back at their haters, but also kind of their fans too. Most K-pop groups do this at least once in their careers, but IVE made a point of doing it repeatedly, not through company statements, but through their concept itself. I think IVE might be the group with the greatest proportion of hater clapback songs in K-pop, except for perhaps the groups who literally make it their concept, like, very arguably, LE SSERAFIM? Starship made statements about people attacking IVE, of course, but most of this was communicated through songs that were written and directed by the company, not the members. And people are a lot more likely to take a crying set of IVE members in muted tones seriously than they are to take a faceless statement from Starship seriously. Yeah, that's a lot to recommend this album series as a cohesively well-marketed product, which literally changed the trajectory of girl group especially, songs and promotions. I mean, that's the privilege you get when you're at the top, right? So, after all of this, having well and truly declared to the world who they were, IVE were ready to transition into their next era with their second full album. IVE came back with their second full album, Revive Plus, in February of 2026. And as with their first album, IVE, it kickstarted a new era for them by being a declaration of who they'd always been and were going to continue to be. I don't have much to say about the pre-release and the first title track, Bang Bang. You know IVE and Starship's tactics by now, you know what's going on here. They continued on from XOXZ. This was basically a direct music video sequel to XOXZ in style, but instead of being creepily romantic, it was about the members themselves. They have their own style, they don't care what others say, and regardless of whether they end on a high note or death, they'll be going out with a bang, literally considering the Western inspirations for the song sonically. But I do like this comment under the music video, which I think sums up the album and the song nicely. It's explosive, it's aggressive, and it's a little bit offensive. Similarly to Bang Bang, Black Hole, the second title track, was a return to their rookie days, but also showed the evolution of their concept through the IVE era. It was a declaration of their confidence and their desires to go higher and so on, basically the same as the Have What I Want introduction video, but also following their evolution to be both internally and externally focused, directed their fans to gain victory for themselves too. The music video is similarly a return to their past. While they maintain the bigger budget appearance of their later albums, this is also the first music video since their single album trilogy where we see beyond the set and see the constructed nature of the music video. We see the lights, the scaffolding for the set, and even the camera in one young scene. The closest we've come to this since Afterlike is the moment in Attitude where Iso runs with a camera which turns out to not be attached to her at all. But even then, we don't see the camera or go outside the set. We just see her freedom. So, Black Hole and Bang Bang, as title tracks of their second full album, the follow-up to IVE, summarises the journey they've been on so far, and create a contrast with IVE by showing their musical, aesthetic, and mental growth, and also the growth of their fandom who are now included in their music. I think this was a surprisingly good way to integrate the many things that IVE have done into one album, and it's backed up nicely by being the first album where the members have solo songs, which are, of course, by the nature of being solo songs, a declaration of each member's individuality. Even more so considering how little IVE are involved in their musical production, but still brought their skills out of the woodwork to contribute to their own solo songs. Yeah, what I mean by that is they're more personalised in comparison to the lack of musical involvement that the members had previously. So, having reached the end of IVE's current Korean album discography, let's discuss. How and why did they get so big? How did they break the produce curse and beat out LE SSERAFIM, who are literally under a Big Four company? And what on earth motivated me to make this video when it may well become redundant in 5 years anyway, because hopefully by then I'll have made best album videos about half of these releases anyway. Wait, shouldn't I have put that section at the start of the video? Am I losing my MO? IVE are not from a Big Four company. IVE do not have a storyline. IVE have had many a controversy. IVE do not have a fully consistent musical sound, nor do they have a fully consistent aesthetic, nor do they have a sound and aesthetic purely aimed at the general public in hope of gaining maximum virality with the uber-powerful Korean population. Not only that, but they're from a company that many people consider to be well past their artistic prime and well and truly mid-tier, considering the state of their other groups. And they have the produce curse working against them. So how on earth did they and Starship do it and become one of the undisputed perceived leaders of 4th gen K-pop? Well, with a lot of skill, a lot of planning, a decent dose of smarts, an elegant mindset, and a chunky dose of luck, which they even acknowledged. IVE and Starship made several smart choices in their formation, marketing, and progression as a group, which, combined with luck, allowed them to gain unprecedented popularity for a post-produce group. First, they made good use of Wonyoung and Yujin's popularity in IZ*ONE, and more importantly, their skills and stage presence as dual centers. Wonyoung's stage presence is all about being sweet and feminine, with a darker side that Starship gave her for IVE, and Yujin was kind of converted to be the more mature and commanding foil to Wonyoung. The two are a great foundation for the group and seriously exemplify their concept, as centers should. I didn't write it into my script, but basically, like, Yujin's like the sexy, predatory one, and Wonyoung's like the royal, luxurious one. Second, Starship picked good members to complement Wonyoung and Yujin, visually, skill-wise, and in terms of stage presence, and they then built these members up as their own skilled performers, so it didn't just feel like Wonyoung, Yujin, and friends. But they also made extreme use of Wonyoung and Yujin's skills as the faces of the group, and used those members' popularity to give the others and the group a leg up. Third, they picked a strong base concept, and then an engaging and multifaceted secondary concept to layer over it. IVE's primary through line, their base concept, is their elegance and femininity, and it's in everything they do. This was a niche that was being left open in the industry after IZ*ONE disbanded and around the time that IVE debuted. 2020 and 2021 were dominated by either girl crush and darker concepts like Esper and Blackpink, cute groups like Twice and Stacey, or sexy groups like Brave Girls. IVE were perfectly primed to fill it, so they did. For their secondary concept, Starship established the multifaceted nature of the group from the start, with their jewel-like logo animation and the Have What I Want film, and then filled that out as they went. The sinister romance, the true self and the idol self, the dreams and the wishes of the members, the confidence and control, and the vulnerability shared with fans. Fourth, when it came to the albums themselves, they created interest and intrigue right off the bat. With 3 single albums released in quick succession, IVE created scarcity without real scarcity, and gained enough interest for their IVE albums to become the next big thing. Fifth, once they'd finished their debut trilogy, they continued their fast-paced delivery and continued building hype through the consistent use of pre-releases and multiple title tracks, both of which allowed them to gain attention and promoted the themes of each album, many of which showed a duality or tension between the different titles. Sixth, they consistently talked back to their haters, their fans, and their general audience, but not in a messy way through weird company statements that then had to be clarified and re-clarified, but with elegance through their own concept, literally embodying their concept through their PR and showing how the members weren't just going to talk the talk from behind the shield of their company, but they'd walk the walk too. Speaking of the fact that none of the members went on a rampage speaking out against fans on Bubble or something either, shows their elegance of mindset, or at least of Starship's mindset. The haters were literally below them and below their efforts to respond in such base, casual ways. They would instead respond, as I said, with elegance and art. And finally, they showed an interesting and engaging progression through their albums, reflecting the growth of the members and their concept while also maintaining that elegant through line, which both kept their fanbase engaged and engaged non-fans who would ideally be converted to fans. All of these tactics show the cohesion of the group's concept and marketing and show why good K-pop marketing and a good understanding of a group's strengths and limitations is key for any company. They also show why it's important for companies to understand the state of the industry and industry niches, because, well, if you aren't going to at least have a storyline or a consistent aesthetic or sound on your side, you better have something, right? And like I said, I've also got very lucky in many regards. You can plan for the best timing of comebacks all you like, but sometimes, as many groups have shown us before, even your best efforts aren't enough. But IVE's efforts were good, and their luck was good, and they succeeded. At the end of the day, IVE are a strong group with a cohesive concept which is well planned and fulfills an industry niche. Their general appeal through their elegance is something that gave them a leg up over LE SSERAFIM, who were constantly under fire for being weird and inauthentic, although LE SSERAFIM are of course by no means unsuccessful, and I discussed their own epic marketing in episode 17. Starship chose good members, made good choices to continue on from IS-1, and through their releases allowed the group to show their audience many versions of themselves while creating their own niche. They did, after all, say that they create the trends rather than following them. I think IVE's wonderful marketing is one of the primary reasons they became so popular, and I wanted to make this video because I think they, along with LE SSERAFIM, are a masterclass in how to market and manage a post-produce group. Hence why both groups, but to a greater extent IVE, were able to break the produce curse. I'm very interested to see where IVE go next, and to see if we get more self-awareness and reflexivity from them, especially in terms of seeing beyond the set. I think their concept is wonderfully layered and has become so much more so as they've built it up over time, which is another way in which they're able to appeal to both general audiences and their fans. But here I go, repeating myself again. I guess I need to add IVE to the long list of groups that I wouldn't necessarily say I stan, but that I follow enough to blab about for far longer than my actual alt groups. Ahem. Other groups on that list are Boy Next Door and Kepler. Ahem. I am a big fan of Wonyoung though, and was very happy to see her in person when IVE came to Australia in 2024. So with that, we're at the end of this video. Thanks for watching, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.